In new story content, we use the Sword of the Taken King to cut through reality and enter the Ascendant realm. Although we forged this sword, we can't yet use its full power, and trust me, it has a lot. Today we're going to talk about the backstory of the Willbreaker sword, and just how powerful it may be come the end of Heresy. The Hive use many weapons: shredders, axes, boomers, and even weapons of sorrow. They also wield what's called cleavers, or in simple terms, swords. Carved of fossilized bone and hell-forged metal, dulled by centuries of slaughter and execution, the cleaver is a terrible weapon of a Hive knight. Despite their mass, they swing easily, as if the sword were aware of its action and eager to tear into the light. There are normal cleavers that, say, regular Hive knights use, and then there are these super powerful ones. We actually encountered one very early on in our journey in Destiny 1, the Sword of Crota mission.
Long ago, the moon fell to Crota. He wielded a sword so dark it drained whatever light it touched. Now Crota sleeps, but the sword does not. The warlocks believe the sword is in a chamber guarded by the Swarm Princes. If you face them and steal the sword, we can see that it is never wielded again.
The only way to destroy the sword is to kill its makers, the Swarm Princes. One of them is said to guard a ritual site near the Hellmouth. We'll challenge him first. Not to unsettle you, but I'm tracking the sword by the light of the Guardians it's killed. It's further below. Grab the sword. That should lure them out. Careful. Its power is dark. Lots of movement all around us. The princes are coming for the sword. The sword is gone. They say that was one of the most powerful weapons the Hive ever wielded against us. Cryptarchs won't believe this.
The Swarm Princes are terrible legends. It was their will that forged the Sword of Crota, a weapon meant to ravage worlds. The great render of light, the darkest edge. They have waited in the shadows of the Hellmouth for their master's return, guarding the sword and sating its ravenous hunger with the light of guardians who have dared to challenge them. We used powerful swords to destroy gatekeepers and slay enemies from time to time when the swords would pop up. The most powerful known sword, though, is the Willbreaker, the Sword of the Taken King. Oryx used this exact sword to cut the worm Aga to pieces. And from our perspective, the most terrifying thing he did with it was slam it into the Dreadnought, unleashing a wave of paracausal destruction through its superweapon.
I know how this ends. We've known since you escaped from that pit.
He's used it for various other things in the past too, like cutting a worm in 2 pieces to create his daughter Death Singers. And you, Irhalak, you are a wizard too, as in the way of twins. I have been with Xivu Arath, who complains that you made a song and sung it in her throne and killed everyone who listened, quite irrevocably. Will we have songs instead of swords and boomers? What have you made for me? Is it a tooth shaped like death? I will keep it in my mouth. What have you written for me? Is it the course of the Nietzsche thought ship? I will track it down. I made you by cutting one larva in half. It would not die. Each half grew into one of you. My sword is named Willbreaker, but it never broke you. When Oryx was destroyed in the campaign for the Taken King in the final mission, he would retreat to his throne world, drawing power from the very sword and retreating to the space above his dreadnought created by the same weapon. He left Willbreaker behind though, and it was here where Eris Morn would approach and claim part of it.
For the first time, the whispers are silent. It is done. I have accepted my fate. I will not fail.
In Destiny 1, we used this hilt she obtained to create the exotic swords Dark Drinker, Raise Lighter, and Bolt Caster. Tolan said this: "Draw close now, closer, yes. Let me tell you why you should not fear Willbreaker, the Sword of Oryx. Firstly, its blade is not dulled by age. Each death it trades for life hones its edge, gives its weight and gravitas and insistence within the vortex of its own totality. Nextly, Willbreaker transcends liminality. Willbreaker demands a subjugation more diffuse than the simple snick and smash of a physical brick. It does not have to touch you to wound you. And lastly, and this is critical, to be taken in Willbreaker's grasp is to know true bliss. That is, to be simplified. That is, to be reduced to one's most basic level. Shredding all higher order thoughts of fear or duty or selfishness, that is, to feel only pain. Now do you see? Now do you understand what you have done?" So no matter how many times Willbreaker was used to slay enemies, it never dulled like a normal blade. It only got sharper. And it doesn't even need to physically hit something to do damage, it can wound in other ways. I mean, heck, it can even cut through the Ascendant plane, and it was also used to take enemies. In the Thin Precipice card from a while back, we see when Kel'Garath was transformed into a taken version of himself by a wizard. This was done using a piece of Oryx's sword Xivu's armies had stored inside of an altar. Now Kel'Garath has failed many times, we last seen him in the final shape in the Pale Heart, but another example of how the sword was used. Rockthryn conjures a dark bolt of lightning that saps the room's dim lighting and casts it into the altar. The altar splits apart with a timbered snap, revealing an emerald sliver of a blade, bleeding shade and whispering rapture. A shard of the Taken King's blade, conquered out of love, stolen away from Saturn's shadow. Kel'Garath fixates upon the blade shard. The wizard gestures to it with a lipless smile, and the knight steps forward. "I will take it, to be an instrument of her will, to cleanse the hate of weakness with loving violence." Kel'Garath genuflects and encloses his claws around the emerald sliver, wisps of shadow spilling between the gaps in his claws. "I offer myself to this union." The barrier of his flesh melts away. A will not his own enraptures him. Kel'Garath, risen from bones, taken by war. In Heresy now in Act 2, the Sword of Oryx returns once more. Eris Morn is stuck in her throne world, too weak to return as of now. So her plan? Use Willbreaker to cut through reality and enter her throne, which we do. Now the only issue was parts of this sword were scattered and we had to find them. And while we got a few pieces from different locations around the solar system, others still remain. A cool side note you may have missed is that the quest tells us that we took Crota's sword from the Vanguard's archives and used its hilt to seat the new blade with Oryx's sword. So we have hilt of Crota's sword and pieces of Oryx's as the blade. With the pieces, we forged this sword by killing Taken aboard the Dreadnought, and use it to defeat enemies and tear through to Eris's throne.
Caught into the rift, Guardian! Constant space between! Eris! Do it, Guardian! I'm on my way!
But our plans with the weapon are not done yet. Eris wants to use Willbreaker to rip Oryx away from the Echo and trap him in her throne world. The Guardian is currently too weak to wield the sword's full capabilities. With Willbreaker, even after the Echo of Oryx's death or trap if it happens, we can use the sword ourselves to traverse the Ascendant plane with ease. And who knows, maybe even personally speak to the deep like Oryx once did.
His sword, Willbreaker, is our key. Its power to avert can drag Oryx from the Echo's hold. The Echo would allow us to travel effortlessly through the Ascendant plane. We cannot let that slip through our fingers, Deputy Commander. I am relying on the strength of the Guardian's will. But, as of yet, the sword is not complete. And wielding it in service to me was almost too much for the Guardian to bear. We may neither destroy the Echo, nor excise Oryx.
So that's where we are. Willbreaker is super powerful. Dreadnought superweapons, taking, slicing worms in half. Although this is a reforged version of Oryx's sword, it can still do some heavy damage. And that will be used in either a good or bad way come the end of episode Heresy. Anyway, Guardians, that's all we got for today's video. Some backstory on the Sword of the Taken King and where it may be heading in the future. If you'd like to see some more Destiny news, lore, and mysteries just like this video, please be sure to subscribe to the channel. I thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next video.